Everybody here is just as dead as you. That's why we call it the land of the dead. Are you ready for your big journey?
No. What journey?
And welcome back, guys, to Leo Gaming. And yes, it is indeed that time of the week.
Retro Tuesday.
Yes, guys, we are on episode 3 of Retro Tuesday. So without further ado, join me as I delve into how it started and my personal experience with this game, the 1998 classic adventure game, Grim Fandango.
Number 9 itself.
The number 9?
That's our top-of-the-line express train.
Grim Fandango is set in the land of the dead, through which recently departed souls, represented as calico-like figures, travel before they reach their final destination. You play as travel agent Manuel Manny Calavera as he attempts to save new arrival Mercedes Meche Colomar, a virtual soul on her journey. The development was led by well-known project leader Tim Schafer, who also created Full Throttle, among others. Schafer had come up with the idea of a Day of the Dead themed adventure even before production of Full Throttle began. He has submitted both concepts to Lucasarts for approval, but due to the dying trend for adventure games at the time, Full Throttle was the one that was greenlit, due to its mainstream appeal, and it instantly became a hit. This then paved the way for Schafer to create Grim Fandango due to Full Throttle's success, which made the pitching process a lot easier. Once development began, Schafer made sure to have twice as many puzzles as Full Throttle, which was declared too short. This meant a lengthier game and a much more ambitious storyline for Grim Fandango. The game was developed on a $3 million budget, which in comparison is pretty much small change compared to today's budgets. The team used the basis of their Sith engine, which was used to create their Star Wars game, to create a new one called the Grim E engine. The theming of the game does have several influences: Aztec beliefs and the afterlife and underworld, with 1930s Art Deco designs, and the plot is in comparison to the film noir genre, and using this theme of film noir for the conversation heavy game. Schafer said, and I quote, "There's something that I feel is really honest about the way people talk that's different than modern movies," and this is of course referring back to the 1930s and 40s. Due to the time constraints during development, the team had to drop several of the puzzles and characters from the game. Schafer noted that they would have needed 2 more years to implement their original ideas. Now, the original release was scheduled for the first half of 1998, but was delayed, and it was eventually released on October the 30th, 2 days before the actual Day of the Dead celebration, and this is where Grim Fandango was born.
I'll just change his auto-response here.
Ah, cripes, Ava, just sign it yourself, will you? I'm busy!
I remember I actually got this game by pure accident. I don't actually remember how, I just remember finding it around the house. And I remember looking at the boxwork and I wasn't actually that impressed, or I just didn't understand the concept of the game. Because you've got to remember, at that time on my PC I was playing Flight Unlimited and FIFA 97, so sort of quite action orientated games. So to come across this sort of boxwork that I didn't really understand, and I've got a feeling it was more about being 11 at the time. That's probably why, as the game had a very adult theme and story. See, that's the thing, back then, again, when I was 11, you didn't have internet for information. I mean, that's saying sort of, oh, when I was 11, we did this. 11-year-olds now do this. It was different back then. See, 11-year-olds didn't have that information. So, whereas an 11-year-old might pick this up now and understand it quite rapidly because they can just Google it. Whereas back then, you didn't have all that. Or if you were lucky enough to have the sort of very early internet, but I didn't. So, it was sort of just picking it up, looking at the boxwork and thinking, oh, I ain't got a clue what this is about. But you still install it and try and play it anyway. I just remember doing that. You find a lot of games, or when you used to get those free games with a new PC, in the box. You used to get like a couple of discs. I think one of them we got was Pod. That was a classic game as well. But anyway, like I say, I found this game and I tried to install it. Now, I think this was the point where our PC might have been getting a bit old, because I remember trying to install it, and this was a problem we had back then. You try and install games and you'd get the error message, not enough storage, not enough this. And again, I learned I was more of a whiz on PCs back then than I would be now. If I went on now, I wouldn't have a clue. But back then, when it was sort of Windows 95, 97, and it was the Pentium 2s, you learn yourself. And again, you didn't have internet to Google how to install a game properly and to make it work. You just had to do it. You sort of kind of had a little guess. I remember fiddling around with the PC and sort of deleting stuff, clearing stuff, and eventually it got to work. But it was always that dread when you were installing it of that sound coming up of the error message. Yes, that dreaded sound. As soon as you heard that noise, you knew something was wrong, and it never gave any information as to what you got to do to sort it out. It was all guesswork. But eventually I managed to get this game installed, and even when I first started playing this game, I didn't know what to do. I mean, I was stuck on that first bit, trying to work out how to. I worked out to put the bread in that little extractor fan for the pigeons, but I couldn't work out for ages how you got that balloon. You got the balloon in there with the bread. One thing I do remember though is how dark this game actually was. I mean, you only have to look. I know the actual screen is physically dark, but in terms of its artwork, it's very dark and very grim, like hence the title. But obviously, back then, I hadn't ever seen that sort of game before, where it was very dark and grim, and it just sort of gave you that. It basically encapsulated the game very, very well, and it gave that great. I think everything came together in a fantastic way. The film noir, the 1930s Art Deco, the sort of the calico figures, the sort of skeletal figures, just encapsulated the game absolutely fantastically, and it really brought out the story and the characters of the game. I mean, what this game, it did give me, there was a lot of, I felt, slapstick comedy in it. I mean, people from the UK will understand, there was a lot of comedy that I felt like it was similar to the Carry On films with Sid James. It just had that little bit of slapstick comedy in with it as well, which sort of lightened up the sort of dark mood of it. Which I thought was absolutely fantastic. There's a lot of funny moments in it that you don't expect to come in, and then it sort of, like this bit, for example, where he's trying to work out what she's done bad in order for her not to get the best package for her travel to the afterlife, and he keeps asking her questions. You have to keep asking his questions, and it's a very comedic moment. You know, mean to animals, and it's very funny, I found anyway.
Shelter,
Just stop right there. Ever cheated on your taxes?
I've never paid taxes in my life.
Aha!
I've never made enough money to be taxed. You know, it's mostly been all volunteer work.
And it wasn't just the comedic value, it was the characters as well. I remember, even though I didn't understand what the story was about at the time, or what I had to do, the scenery and the environment and the characters, just look, the characters draw you in. Yes, the graphics are dated now, but back then it was like, wow, look at this. I mean, I just didn't even understand what was going on. I was just drawn in by the characters themselves and the environment. And one thing I do remember is at that time I actually had a game called Microsoft 3D Movie Maker. I don't know if anybody else remembers this, but I used to play that, and the environment actually reminds me of that game, the Microsoft 3D Movie Maker, which I used to love playing as well. And this environment has that sort of Resident Evil feel to it as well, where it's static, but there's certain elements that move when your character interacts with it. It has that Resident Evil feel to it as well. So it's just the whole environment combined a whole load of elements which just drew you in, even as a child. Although an adult would have understood, but as a child, you were just drawn in by the artwork and the environment and the scenery of the game. You see, what I used to do as well quite a lot, because obviously being at a young age, I used to skip these cutscenes, especially the conversation heavy ones, and I never used to read them. I just used to want to get into the game. Now, the problem with that is because obviously I'm skipping them, and this is probably the reason why I got stuck, is because you had to read them to get a lot of clues as to some of the puzzles in the game. Now, I used to skip them and then just sort of wander around and completely, either by luck or guesswork, work out the puzzles, which obviously used to take triple as long as it would if you listened to the conversations. And it just used to be, now, if I play it out, like this what I'm playing on is the remastered version. Obviously, it is pretty similar to the real game, it just doesn't look as old. But the graphics are the same and everything about it, all the mechanics are the same. But I really get into it now, being an adult. I really get into the story more, and it's really, it's a lot easier to play. But I just think this game is so fantastic. I mean, even the item collection, that used to be really good. Like, just sort of going through with your inventory and having a guess at what ones used to go up to. You get to a point where you used to go up to everything with every item and try every item and anything and everything, because the game was so, it made you do that because you just felt like there was a lot of freedom to this game. This game, for some reason or another, was actually a commercial flop when it released back in 1998. But in recent years, it has been dubbed the last genuine classic to come from Lucasarts. See, it's only from 2005 onwards that this game has been dusted off and represented to the world, and as recently as 2012, this game has been considered a great title for video games as an art form. Not only was this game a game changer, but it was also the last adventure game of its time. The game has a massive fan community which has been active for more than 10 years. So this, ladies and gentlemen, is me to the game saying a massive thank you. And that is the end of my trip down memory lane, guys, for this game, Grim Fandango. If you do like my content and you would like to see more and keep up to date, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe buttons and click on the notification bell to keep bang up to date. And also, please check out my previous Retro Tuesday on the classic game, the classic original game of Doom, which is up on your screens right now. And I would like to say thank you all for watching. I hope you all enjoy the rest of your week, and goodbye.